Hello everyone, Stormy1 here. Today we'll be talking about the severe weather threat that will be coming into Kentucky Friday night and into Saturday. We're going to get started with the watch warning advisory display across the country. Pretty quiet out here in the east, but it's a different story out west where we got red flag warnings. Those are the counties highlighted in the hot pink, and you can see in the brown colors are wind issues out there, so pretty active out west. Some of that activity will make it here into Kentucky later this week, Friday and into Saturday. And really today was also a very nice day. Temperatures got in the 70s out there, somewhat breezy. Tomorrow we'll do it a couple of degrees cooler with the smallest chance for a shower or storm out there. Most of us will stay dry. And then Friday, it's going to be a very warm day, and I think some of us will hit the low 80s on Friday. And it'll be a little bit breezy out of the south as well. Winds could be a little bit gusty at times. Maybe some wind gusts pushing near 40 miles an hour will be possible at times Friday. So now let's move on to the Storm Prediction Center outlook. So this is for today. We got slight risk for severe weather across southeastern Oklahoma, northeastern Texas, northwestern Louisiana, and southwestern Arkansas. Very low tornado risk, but damaged winds, large hail are the main hazards. Tomorrow, the severe weather risk is more focused down towards the deep south. And then by day 3, which is Friday, got a pretty large area for the potential for severe weather, which extends from the Gulf Coast all the way up towards Minnesota and Wisconsin. We got an enhanced risk for severe weather, which includes parts of the mid to lower Mississippi River Valley, and that also includes western Kentucky. And here's a closer inspection for Kentucky, and you can see that enhanced risk includes basically nearly all of western Kentucky. Out there, which would include places like Owensboro, Madisonville, Hopkinsville, and Paducah in an enhanced risk. And then we have a slight risk for severe weather, up and down along the I-65 corridor, which would include, Bowling Green and Louisville, Elizabethtown. And that slight risk gets extended as far east as almost to the 127 corridor out there. And that marginal risk gets extended out towards the Bluegrass region out there. And you can also see here in a little bit more detail here, out towards western Kentucky, you see that hatched area out there? That's potential for some significant severe weather. And in the day 3 outlook doesn't specify, what could be significant out there. You'll see that tomorrow. But there is some potential for some significant severe weather out in western Kentucky, and this is primarily for Friday night into early Saturday morning. And right now, western Kentucky looks to be the primary concern. And this will be the first wave. There's going to be another wave of severe weather that's going to come in later today on Saturday. And here's the SPC outlook, day 4 for Saturday. Slight risk includes nearly all of western, or not just western, but nearly all of Kentucky. Some exceptions in far western Kentucky, but most of the states in the slight risk. You do notice an enhanced risk farther to our south out there, down towards southeastern Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia. Don't be surprised if that gets expanded northeastward into parts of central and eastern Kentucky when the day 3 outlook comes out tomorrow. So let's get in more detail with this severe weather potential for Friday night into Saturday. And like I said, there's going to be two distinct waves. First wave is going to be Friday night and Saturday morning. The next wave is going to be later day, Saturday afternoon into the evening. So, and there's your light shower storm chance on Thursday. You can see there from the NAM suggesting a few pop-ups out there, but not a big deal or anything. But here we go. Going into Friday morning, we got this huge system that's moving across the western U.S. And you can see here We get a powerful low that exits out the Rockies of Colorado into western Kansas Friday morning, and that's a 980 millibar low. And that's a very strong low out there. And you're going to see that low kind of intensify throughout the day on Saturday, and it bottoms out to a 974 millibar low in southeastern Nebraska. And with a low pressure system like that, we can expect out here in Kentucky a pretty good southwesterly wind. Wind gusts that could be 30 to 40 miles an hour during the day on Friday. And you can see off to our west, we do have some thunderstorms that are blowing up. And some of those will be severe storms out there. And you can see how it moves into far western Kentucky, Friday evening into Friday night. And then you can kind of see how it collapses as it gets to central Kentucky as you get into Saturday morning. And that's because of how dry the air is. As soon as you get east of I-65, those dew points really start to drop, and that's going to help weaken those storms as it gets farther to the east. So, and here's the high-risk name here in terms of the reflectivity here. And we'll start off with the Friday wave first. And you can see here how you do have a big line of storms that initiate from southwestern Iowa through Missouri down towards Arkansas. And that pretty intense line of storms does move up into Illinois. Could very well be damaging winds, probably some quick spin up tornadoes along that line. But a little bit farther south, it's going to be a different story. And you can see here how these cells here are not really in a squall line and more like kind of like scatter variety storms. And that could be a more discrete mode, which means just scatter pop-up storms, not really linear or anything like that. And that's not a very good thing. You don't want storms to be discrete out there, and that's because that increases your potential for tornadoes out there. And this is towards the end of high-risk NAM run. Doesn't go through the entire event, but you can see that broken band of some showers and storms does move across western Kentucky and up into Indiana out there. And some of those storms can be strong to severe out there. So let's do a little bit of a deeper dive into this. Let's go deeper. So this is the 500 millibar wind. So, and you can see here, Friday evening here, we got this, what's known as a jet streak out there. And that's an area of stronger winds, in the upper levels in the atmosphere. And usually out ahead of those jet streaks is where we can see some enhanced thunderstorm development. It helps increase the amount of lift in the atmosphere out ahead of the jet streak. And honestly, I think the high-risk NAM is a little bit underdone on the development of it. But you can see how that jet streak, does come down a little bit. As you get deeper into Friday night, the jet streak does calm down, but we still got some strong winds out there. I mean, winds up to 100 knots is still more than enough to support growth of thunderstorms out there. And you can see those thunderstorms kind of popping up, out ahead that jet streak from western Tennessee all the way up into Illinois out there. And we can also look into the 850 millibar winds, and this is the Lolovo-Jet region. And, for severe weather, more ideal around 50 knots would be enough to support severe weather. We got winds up around 80 knots, and that is a lot, and that's a pretty strong Lolovo-Jet, and that's a big problem because that really helps increase the amount of wind shear in the atmosphere. This can also increase the threat for those gradient winds outside of those storms, where wind gusts can try to push 40 miles an hour underneath a Lolovo-Jet like this. And then again here, this is going to be a highly sheared environment. There's going to be more than enough wind shear to support severe weather for this setup here as you go into Friday night and into Saturday morning out there. if I go back to this website here, another important ingredient for severe weather is going to be instability. So if we kind of look at surface-based CAPE here, so this is back towards, late Friday afternoon to the evening. You can see here areas in blue is where we got instability exceeding 1,000 joules per kilogram. That's enough to support severe weather, especially with the wind dynamics that we're going to have for this setup in particular. That's going to be more than enough. And you can see here how those 1,000 plus joules per kilogram CAPE does move into western Kentucky, even picking up around 1,500 joules per kilogram CAPE. And that's quite a bit of CAPE for a setup like this. And of course, as you get deeper into Friday night, those instability values do start to go down, which can help weaken the storms to a certain extent out there. There will still be strong severe at this point, but they may not be as intense as they could be as they enter western Kentucky. And we also talked about the dew points of how dry the air is going to be. You can see out ahead of those storms there, across central and eastern Kentucky, the dew points are going to be in the upper 40s to low 50s out ahead of these storms, which that's too, and the air is just simply going to be too dry, and that's one of the reasons why the storms are going to collapse, especially as they get towards the I-65 corridor, or really east of I-65. That's when you're really going to notice those storms there really start to die down. But areas that we do see thunderstorms is where we have dew points, right around 60 degrees. And that's enough to support severe weather. And really ideal for dew points for severe weather is 60 degrees or higher. And if you do have dew points like that, that can support some severe weather. And you can see here, we do have that in western Kentucky. So we got that jet streak at 500 millibars. You got the low of a jet screaming out of the south. You got the moisture. You got the lift. You got the wind shear. You got the instability. So most of your ingredients for severe weather will be in place Friday evening into Friday night. So, yes. And that really helps keep confidence pretty high that western Kentucky could certainly see some severe storms out there. Let's look at another thing here. We're going to look at something that's known as the supercell composite, and it's pretty much a combination of wind shear and instability here. And higher the number, the more favorable the environment is, or in other words, the higher potential is there for severe weather. And you can see here the numbers are pretty darn high, and I'll tell you that with a supercell composite, at least above a 2 can be favorable for some severe storms. But if you get numbers, north of 7, that's a pretty good environment for some severe weather. And even potentially significant severe weather as well, especially as you get north of a 10. We got numbers up as high as 16 or even 17 out there. Those are some pretty high numbers. And if I get a forecast sounding, let's go to, right around Paducah here. Let's get a forecast sounding around Paducah and see what this model here is thinking of what the environment could look like. And then again, those supercell composite parameters are quite high. Part of the reason is that you got that very strong low of a jet, which keeps the wind shear parameters quite high. And here you go here. So you can see here, I'm going to try to explain this the best I can here. But we'll start off with this right here. This red box here. So this is basically kind of like an X-ray of the atmosphere. And right in here is your wind bars. And this is very important here, because if you look at the surface here, you can see the winds are kind of out of the southeast. But as you get towards, 850 millibars, which is the low of a jet, the winds begin to shift. So winds of the surface are like this, and then you get winds at 850 millibars like this. So that's wind change direction with height, and that can be supportive for not just severe weather but also tornadoes as well. And this wind shear profile would support the potential for tornadoes in western Kentucky. So we got that. And then you look at our hodograph, which is over here. Let me do a better job. So this is our hodograph over here. This can give us an idea of those supercell structures out there. And you can see here, it's nearly off the chart, which gives you an idea of how much wind shear is going to be out there, but also how quick these storms are going to be. And these are not going to be slow-moving storms. These storms will be moving at a pretty good speed, maybe pushing 50 miles an hour for storm motion. So these storms will not be wasting any time Friday night. And you can see here, kind of goes off the hodograph here, but I imagine it looks something like this. So this is basically your hook echo right here. So you got your hook echo. The main part of the storm is up here. This would be very favorable for supercells that could produce tornadoes. And not just tornadoes in general, but also potential for strong tornadoes out there as well. So the hodograph does support the potential for tornadoes. And let's look at some numbers down here. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Down here, let's look at some numbers down here. So I'm going to start off with the SRH. Let's do this in a different color here. So let's use yellow here. So I want to look at these numbers here for wind shear. So SRH, numbers are north of 600. That is more than enough. And that tells you that there is a ton of shear in this environment. Normally for tornadoes or just severe weather in general, north of 200 would be enough to support severe weather. Potential for strong tornadoes, in my opinion, would be north of 300. We got numbers, 600 to almost 800. Those are very high numbers. So there's a ton of shear in our atmosphere out here. And that's one of the biggest concerns about Friday night, is that there is going to be a ton of wind shear, out there. No doubt about it. So that would be more than enough to support severe weather. Let's talk about instability. Let me do a little better job here. There we go. So instability. Surface-based CAPE is 1300. That's more than enough. Honestly, for a wind shear environment like this, really only need 500 joules per kilogram. That'll be enough to support severe weather in an environment like this. Downdraft CAPE, D CAPE, down here is almost 1,000. That would support damage of winds. Maybe the main limiting factor with this is the near surface lap rates. It's a 5.8. That's actually relatively weak, but it's also pretty normal for the overnight hours. I don't think that's going to impact it that much, especially when I look at other parameters like 3 CAPE as an example. It's up to 107. That would support some severe weather. But also with surface-based instability being 1300, I don't think surface-based lap rates is going to be that big of an issue with this up here. But if you look at the mid-level lap rates, 7.4 up as high as an 8. That can support some large hail as well. Also, kind of going back up in here. So when your green line is away from the red line, which is your temperature line. So your red line is your temperature line and your green line is the dew point line. When they're apart like this, that's an indication of dry air. So you got a little bit of what's known as an elevated mixed layer, which the elevated mixed layer helps enhance severe weather environments. It can also create more instability as well. It's not the strongest elevated mixed layer I've ever seen, but it's also not the weakest elevated mixed layer I've ever seen. But I think it's just good enough to support severe weather. It can also prevent a little bit of a messier mode. Although, if you look down towards, between 700 millibars down towards the surface, where the green line basically overlaps with the red line, that means there's quite a bit of moisture out there. So, but I don't think that's going to impact this setup here too much. I don't think it's going to. But what this can tell me here is that a lot of these storms here could produce quite a bit of rain as well. But you can also have if we were to see tornadoes, Friday night, the tornadoes could be rain wrapped. So that's another thing too. But overall, so everything I said, let's just say this overall. This supports all modes of severe weather. It supports damaged winds, large hail, and even tornadoes. And some of these tornadoes could be strong or maybe even long track. And like I was saying earlier, these storms are going to be moving fairly quickly across western Kentucky. Could be moving 40, 50 miles an hour, maybe a little faster than that. So if you do get underneath a tornado warning Friday night, definitely take action. Most definitely. And these storms here would not be wasting any time out there as well. So I do have some concerns for Friday night. I'll talk a little bit more about this tomorrow or on Friday. But my main area of concern will probably be far western Kentucky, especially around Paducah, maybe out towards Evansville as well. But I think the storms will be more intense in far western Kentucky. But as it approaches the I-65 corridor, that's when we should start to see them weaken, especially when it gets east of I-65. When it gets east of I-65, that's when we really start to see the storms begin to die down. And I think a good chunk of the storms should diminish as they get into eastern Kentucky. I mean, there'll probably still be some showers left over, maybe some strong gusty winds possibly, since there is a decent amount of dry air to work with. But overall, stay weather aware, western Kentucky, Friday night. So now let's go ahead and move on to the second part of this. So let's talk about Saturday. So that's the first wave. So first wave Friday night into Saturday morning. The second wave comes in Saturday afternoon, or late Saturday afternoon into the evening. So let's talk a little bit deeper about this here. And we'll go back here first. So there's our storms diminishing, Saturday morning. Now those storms will leave boundaries behind. So we could see some storms try to initiate Saturday afternoon, though that's not a slam dunk scenario right now because we don't have any convecting allowing models in range, which would give us a better idea in terms of the storm mode or what could potentially happen. So there's still some uncertainty about Saturday since the cams are not in range. But what's going to happen here is that cold front that's off to our west is going to stall out a little bit. It's going to slow down. And what's going to happen here is that we're going to have a secondary low that develops along the cold front. And this will not be a weak low. This is going to be a strong low pressure system, maybe even going below 990 millibars. So it could very well be a strong low pressure system. And you can see here from the NAM model, it shows a 987 millibar low in northwestern Alabama. And that low pressure system will move very quickly off to the northeast. And really by Saturday night, should already be up in northern Ohio. So it's going to be a very quick moving low pressure system moving up along that cold front. And let me tell you guys this. Secondary lows with a setup like this, I mean, of course, the main low is going to be up towards upper Michigan by this point. And that low up there will be a little bit weaker too, but it won't be as strong as it will be on Friday. But it's still a strong low, 980 millibars in upper Michigan. That's still a pretty strong low. But anytime when you have a secondary low that develops much farther to the south, that's usually not a good thing, because what those secondary lows can do is enhance the wind shear in the environment, especially in its localized warm sector, which in this scenario here, the area of most concern would be down across parts of Mississippi and Alabama, and probably in the parts of northwestern Georgia and southeastern Tennessee. That would be the area of greatest concern for the second wave Saturday, and that's where I anticipate the most significant severe weather. So what does this all mean for Kentucky, going into Saturday? Well, it's complicated. I mean, Like we said earlier, number one, there's going to be a secondary low that develops up along the cold front. It's still not a slam dunk of exactly where this low is going to go, because depending on where the low is going to go is going to determine your impacts for the second wave. Up along that low pressure system track, could be a swath of some pretty heavy rain. So let's look into that real quick. And here's a closer inspection here. You can see here all those showers and thunderstorms going over central Kentucky, and that's where the low thinks it's going to track based off of the NAM. And it doesn't go for the entire event just yet. It only goes through just about Saturday night. But if we talk about those rainfall amounts, there is potential for training of showers and training of those storms. And where that training occurs is where the highest rainfall amounts are going to be. And those rainfall numbers could be anywhere from 2 to 4 inches of rain. Now, the good news is that we've recovered very well from the Kentucky floods back in February. Our grounds are not saturated anymore, so we can handle a decent amount of rain. We really could. But this can still be enough to cause some minor flooding issues. So some flooding cannot be ruled out. Areas that could see 2 to 4 inches of rain out there. So that's one threat. Another threat is, of course, going to be the severe weather. If you're going to be east of the low track, that's where the greatest potential for severe weather is going to be. If you're west of the low track, you won't see severe weather from this secondary wave. So it's basically just along and east of the low track is the area of concern for severe weather on the secondary wave. But also another thing to take into account is that, we're going to have that wave early Saturday morning. And one of the bigger questions is going to be, how well does the environment, recover? That's another question, because that can determine the severity of this next wave of storms. And most models suggest that the environment will recover before the next wave comes in. And you can see here, this is the NAM for peak time heating on Saturday, and it's got an area of 1,000 joules per kilogram Cape, even nearing 2,000 joules per kilogram towards Nashville. That's going to be enough instability to support severe weather, and that's going to be out ahead of that low pressure system. Now, I can imagine there's probably going to be a warm front with a secondary low, which can be a focus point for some storms to form. Now, that's not going to be linear. Those are going to be discrete storms. We definitely got to keep an eye on those. If we do see discrete thunderstorms develop up along the warm front, all modes of severe weather could be on the table. And there's potential for that. We may have a better idea on that when the cams get in range. But the main action comes in with the cold front, with the low pressure system. But by that time, the instability values are going to start dropping as that low pressure system gets up here. And you can see here with those thunderstorms developing, it absolutely takes away the instability. It drains the instability out there when those storms here do initiate later in the day on Saturday. And then again, we don't exactly know where this low here is going to track. But if I'm going to take a wild guess here, at least as it stands right now, I think it's going to track probably something like this. May go over Louisville, probably over Covington and Cincinnati. And I think the area to really watch for severe weather on a secondary wave, we'll do this in orange, would probably be these areas in here. So I think that's going to be along and south of east of the Highway 68 corridor out there. And this could change as we get closer here a little bit. Let's do a little bit of a deeper dive on this here, because there's a little more to go in depth with this severe weather setup. And we'll start off with the upper air dynamics before I end this video. Let's look at the jet stream here. And this is quite an impressive setup from the upper wind dynamics standpoint. If we look from the jet stream here, you start to notice here how the jet stream splits. Here's the main part of the jet stream here. Let me do this in different color. Let's do this in black. So these black arrows here. So this is the jet stream right here. All of a sudden, the jet stream splits as it gets to the deep south. Right in here, in this black circle here, is where you're going to get a ton of lift in the atmosphere. This is what we call diffluence. And thunderstorms can build very tall, and this is going to lead to a lot of lift in the atmosphere, and the storms are going to build quite tall out there. These are going to be some pretty big storms out there because they can build up pretty far up into the atmosphere. So the lift, there's going to be plenty of lift out there to keep it simple. If we go to 500 millibar winds, you can see here, you can see how big this trough is, and you can see how huge this trough is. The trough covers basically the entire central and western U.S. It's a huge trough. But you can kind of see here as we kind of get some divergence out here. You start to get this split flow here at 500 millibars. And within that split flow is where we're likely to see some big storms develop, which in this case here would be right over Kentucky, Tennessee, and down into the deep south. So we got that. And if we go to the Lova jet here, which we'll go over here real quick and check out the Lova jet. And you can see here just east of the low track is where you're going to see a very strong Lova jet. And you can see how those winds there, generally anywhere from 60 to even upwards of 80 knots. So pretty similar to Lova jet that we're going to be dealing with Friday night. So pretty strong Lova jet out there, and that's going to create a ton of wind shear in the atmosphere. And there's no doubt about it in my mind that there's going to be a ton of shear. With a setup like this, you're going to have a ton of wind shear in the atmosphere. It's just all going to come down to how much instability you're going to have, and even the dew points too. If we actually look at dew points, they're not all that impressive, but I think even with a setup like this, we can still get severe weather even with upper 50 dew points. It's not quite ideal, but I think we can still get the job done even with upper 50 dew points. Areas in far eastern Kentucky that may be stuck in the mid 50s for dew points, the potential may be lower. But if I kind of go back to a little bit earlier in the day, so this is peak time heating on Saturday. You can see here we got dew points, right around 60. That would be good enough to support some severe weather out there. So this is another one of those things we got to watch, is how high those dew points can get as well. And I can also determine how much instability we could see as well. So overall, Saturday's got a high ceiling, but I think the greatest threat for severe weather in terms of Saturday is going to be down towards Mississippi, Alabama, northwestern Georgia, and southeastern Tennessee. That's the area of greatest concern. Up here in Kentucky, there's still some uncertainty that exists. The cams are not in range yet, so there's still a good amount of questions of how Saturday's going to turn out, but overall, the ceiling is up there for Saturday in the area. I will watch pretty closely here would probably be along and south of east of the Highway 68 corridor out there. Of course, we also got the potential for some minor flooding where those 2 to 4 inches of rain may fall. And also, one thing I almost forgot to mention is the wind gradient. With pretty impressive wind dynamics, especially from the Lova jet being quite strong, you could probably expect to see wind gusts, 40, maybe even pushing 50 miles an hour outside of those showers of storms on Saturday. And that could depend on how strong the low is going to be. If we can get down below 990 millibars, there can definitely be some wind advisory criteria winds. Even with the lower dew points, that could help a little bit mix down some of those winds down towards the surface. So we also got to keep a close eye on that as well. And all modes of severe weather could be possible on Saturday, but we'll have a better idea on Saturday, probably tomorrow, or even on Friday. But anyways, guys, that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this video, hit that like button. If you really like my channel, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification to never miss an upload. If you guys got any questions, put in the comment section down below. I'll answer you guys' questions. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye, and have a good day.